Seriously, we're talking about abs, and specifically today we're going to be talking about the difference between cardio strength training and specific abdominal exercises. Which is best? What should you be focusing on? What's the best way to use the combination of the three, if that is the best way to do it? And yeah, so we're going to talk about the differences, the similarities, the benefits, the pros and cons, the whole enchilada. Okay, so you're going to really understand the difference, because a lot of people ask, is it better to do this or is it better to do that? And the first thing to understand is that there is no right or wrong way to do things. There are just better and less effective approaches to burning belly fat, getting a flat stomach, and really getting strong toned abs. And that's what we're talking about. Okay, so what I've done here is I've broken this this topic down into long-term and short-term. And these essentially denote long-term solutions or long-term benefits and short-term benefits. Now, if I were a politician, I'd be focusing on the short-term benefits over my term, and that's all that matters. But we're not. Okay, we're concerned about the lifelong results that you're after, but also getting some short-term benefits from what you're doing. So let's start off by talking about cardio. Okay, so we have two types of cardio really. We've got long duration, slow intensity, because the longer you go, the lower the intensity has to be. You can't sprint for 45 minutes. It's just physically impossible. So our slow, long duration cardio has short-term benefits. We'll just write this down. I'm just going to say LS cardio. Okay, long, slow cardio. Why does it have short-term benefits? Well, because let's say you go for a jog for about half an hour, and you're on the treadmill, or if you're on the bike or elliptical, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Typically, you look at the cardio machine and it says you burned X number of calories. Okay, so let's say you burned 400 calories in 30 minutes of work on the treadmill. It's not bad. Okay, but what happens after you're done? After you've done that work, what happens? Not much. Okay, you just haven't taken your body metabolically to a level that is going to continue burning calories after that 30 minutes of long, slow cardio. And that's why this is called short term. You're burning calories during that specific time period, and that's it. Okay, so this is the typical mentality right here. The short-term mentality is typically what you see in commercials when you see these companies advertising their chocolate chip cookies, and the woman sitting in the office thinking to herself, oh, it's okay, I can have one, I've done my cardio for the day. Right? I burned 200 calories, therefore I can eat 200 calories. This is the thinking that basically is promoting this. This is stemming from that. So does long, slow cardio have its place? Sure. I do long, slow cardio when I walk my dogs. If I want to do a recovery jog, if I've worked out pretty intensely all week and I want something lighter to recover and rejuvenate my body, I will do some long, slow cardio. But I'm not doing it for the purposes of burning fat or improving my cardio endurance. I'm doing it as a recovery method. Okay? So that's essentially the benefit of doing long, slow cardio. It should not be used for anything other than maybe building a base if you've never worked out before, and using it as a recovery tool to help your body rid itself of some toxins and some lactic acid buildup after a workout or on its own. Now, let's look at the flip side to long, slow cardio, and this one's going to fit into long-term benefits. We're going to call this one HIT cardio, or HIIT, or basically known as interval training. So what's the difference between interval training and long, slow cardio? Again, I'm going to go up here. Hopefully the camera can follow me. But I don't know if it will, because there's no one behind the camera. So interval training is this. Okay, I'm going to draw a short graph, a small graph here. Hopefully you can see it. Interval training is a bout of high intensity, low intensity, high intensity, low intensity, high intensity, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So over time, what happens is your general heart rate tends to increase over the duration of the workout. And because of that, there's a benefit in terms of increasing caloric burn during the workout. So you also have a short-term benefit. Actually, I'm going to write this down here as well, because you'll actually burn more calories in a lot of cases doing interval training cardio in the short term, but you'll also get a long-term benefit. Okay? Now here's the thing, because let's say at the top of this graph is your maximum possible That's like as fast as you can run. I'm just going to use running as an example if you're doing cardio. The max you can run, let's say on the treadmill, is 10.0. So you do an interval of, let's say, 10 seconds at 10.0. You drop it down to level 6 for, let's say, 30 seconds, which would be down here. Bring it back up, bring it back down, bring it back up, bring it back down, bring it back up, and so forth. What ends up happening is over the course of, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes, you're spending, X number of minutes at your fastest possible speed. So why is that beneficial? Well, obviously from an aerobic standpoint, it's very beneficial for improving your performance and cardiovascular endurance, but also from a belly fat burning perspective, is that you are naturally increasing, you're spending more time at a higher intensity, and that's very important from a metabolic standpoint, long term, okay? Because now you are revving up your metabolism, and studies have shown that, well, I call this the afterburn effect, where you're actually after the workout, okay? So let's say you did intervals for 15 minutes as opposed to doing a 30-minute cardio session, long and slow. You're gonna be burning a ton more calories, depending on how you're doing this, during the actual workout, but also after the workout. Because you've revved up your metabolism so high by working at a high intensity that this afterburn effect, I'll call this afterburn in parentheses here, your body's going to continue to burn calories as it's trying to recover itself after the workout. And again, the afterburn effect will be dependent on two variables: the intensity at which you worked and how long you worked out at that intensity. So the higher the intensity and the longer you worked, the greater the afterburn effect, which means that you can go back to the office or wherever, sit on the couch and watch TV, and you'll be burning calories to a greater extent, a much greater extent than if you did long, slow cardio. And this has been backed up by tons of studies. Again, I wish I had them on the top of my head. I could just kind of quote different things, but I don't have that capability. But nonetheless, the higher the intensity you work at during the workout, the more benefit you're going to have afterwards as well as during the workout. Okay, so that's the cardio side of things. That's the benefit of doing cardio, specifically interval training. How often should you do interval training? I believe 2 to 3 times a week maximum, because it's physically and psychologically demanding to push yourself to that extent. Okay, so 2 to 3 times max. Use maybe a nice light cardio session if you want as a recovery tool, and that should be it for cardio. Okay, that should be it. From a belly fat loss or total fat loss perspective, if you want to see your abs, if you want to do some of that kind of first thing in the morning cardio with no breakfast, go for a walk, do something light where you're tapping into more of your fat reserves at that intensity, at that lower intensity where you're actually using fat as a fuel. But here's another cool strategy that you can use that I didn't talk about in that video, is if you want to shoot up if you want to do a little bit of interval training at the end, let's say you do one of those kind of pre-breakfast workouts, do a long, slow, light jog or walk with your dogs or whatever you want to do in the morning. Finish it off with a couple minutes of just sprints, or just even actually just a couple sprints, 1, 2, 3 sprints of 10 seconds. Studies have actually shown what that does is that increases epinephrine or adrenaline secretion from your adrenal glands. And epinephrine, what it does is it's a hormone that goes to your fat cells, okay, and it activates an enzyme called HSL, or hormone sensitive lipase, to break down fat into its different components, free fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so these free fatty acids are then taken out of the fat cell, so the fat cell can shrink over time, and these will be metabolized or oxidized for fuel. So that's pretty cool. So you have the high intensity, short burst high intensity. It's going to release more epinephrine or adrenaline, same word, same thing. It's going to go to the fat cell. It's going to say, hey, I need you to burn more fat, because the epinephrine is a breaking down hormone. It's going to mobilize energy reserves for enhanced blood sugar. Okay, so that's the benefit of doing high intensity work. Now, speaking of high intensity work, let's move over to strength training. Strength training is very, very important, and I'm going to put it here. Okay, I'm just going to call it ST. Long term. If you want the long term benefits of sculpted, toned abs, and again, if you're a woman, if you just want a flat stomach, you need to be doing strength training. And when I'm talking about strength training, in this case, I'm also referring to specific abdominal exercises, but I'll talk about that in the third part. Let's talk about overall full body strength training for a second. Full body strength training, the overall long-term benefit from this is that you are developing more lean mass, okay? So and that's very important from a metabolism standpoint, because the more mass, the more lean muscle you have, the higher your metabolism will be, or the higher your metabolic rate, I should say, will be. And that's important because your metabolic rate, your resting metabolic rate is 70% of your total daily caloric expenditure is coming from your base metabolic rate. So the number of calories you're burning at rest. And that metabolic rate is going to be largely dependent on your lean mass, and specifically the muscle you have. So you need to be doing strength training from that perspective, because muscle is much more metabolically active than fat is. It burns about 50 times more calories than fat does. So that's very important. The other thing is, just from a posture perspective, right? You don't want to be slouching around like this, right? Like you want to have a good posture, because just aesthetically, if you want to be looking hot and sexy, well, you definitely want to strengthen your abs. You want to strengthen your core. You want to strengthen your upper back muscles. You want to strengthen actually all of the muscles in your body, because the more toned and strengthened they are, the more erect and more confident you'll look, and the more everything's going to look as it should, okay? So strength training is really important, and I'm going to say one more thing about this when it comes to actually burning fat. So not necessarily building muscle, but from a burning fat perspective, you want to be using workouts, strength training workouts, where you're pushing weight, a good amount of weight, not doing like 2-pound bicep curls, but a challenging weight, 6 to 8 repetitions, full body movements. So you're taking weight from the floor, for instance, to above your head. You're moving that weight over a great amount of distance, and what that's going to do is it's going to burn a lot of calories based on the premise of work. As you can tell, I'm a big science geek. I love this stuff. So work, this is from physics, work equals force times displacement. You can think about force as the weight that you're using. The heavier the weight, the more force is in that equation. Distance, well, the greater the distance, the greater you move that weight, the more calories, right, denoted as work in this equation, you're going to use. Okay, the more muscle you involve, basically is dependent on how far you move the weight. Okay, so essentially we're looking at how much weight are you lifting, over what kind of distance are you moving that weight, and those two variables will determine how many calories or how much work you are doing. That's very important, because remember in that first video when I talked about sit-ups and they don't really do anything from a calorie burning perspective because they're so small and localized? Well, that's because you're using very little weight, maybe just the upper half of your torso. The distance is so small, you're maybe just bringing your shoulder blades off the floor, and therefore there's very little work. There's very little metabolic work. Compare that to doing a squat press. Okay, so you've got weights at your shoulders. From a standing position, you drop down into a squat and bring the weights above the head. That's going to be more metabolically demanding than a sit-up. Okay, so you're not necessarily just focusing on the abs, but you're focusing on total body reconstruction, or a total body makeover, where you're burning total calories, you're getting your body revved up, warm. That's the way to elicit more fat burning, okay? So that's the strength training perspective, okay? Full body exercises, big movements, okay? Large distance, using good challenging weights with good form. Now the third part, so the strength training really has a long-term benefit. You're not going to get much short-term benefit from a calorie burning perspective from a workout using weights. Okay, depending on the intensity, and if you have them set up in a circuit training fashion, you might. But the real benefit is in the long term. Okay, so don't let the short-term stuff fool you. I'll just put this as a zero. The third thing, the final thing we want to look at are the abdominal stuff. Okay, the ab specific exercises. Okay, so the core abdominal exercises. The benefit here, I'm going to just say both. I'm going to just put abs. I'm going to say there's a benefit in the short term and the long term. So the benefit in the short term is that you feel like you're doing the work. Okay, so a lot of times we go to the gym and we don't even know what we're doing. We're just saying, hey, you know what, my arms look a little thin today, so I'm going to do biceps and triceps. That's the training mentality of a lot of us, myself included. If I don't have a plan set out, I'll just go to the gym and say, you know what, I think my biceps need to look a little bit bigger today, so I'm going to hit the biceps. It's ridiculous, right? So the short-term effect is the sense where you feel like you've had a little bit too much to eat over the last couple of days, your abs feel a little bit flabby, so you want to feel a good burn, like you feel like you're doing something in there. So the short-term benefit of doing abdominals is for that, is the psychological side, is where you actually get that burn in those muscles, you can feel them getting tighter, and again, it's a very short-term effect, almost like if you were to do bicep curls, your bicep would grow in size for a couple hours and then it'd kind of go back to normal. So this is the short-term benefit of doing abdominal specific exercises. The long-term benefit to doing abdominal or core specific exercises are numerous and very important. Now, one thing that's really important to understand, and I'm going to talk about this in another video, is the different types of abdominal exercises. Movement versus stability. I'm not going to focus on that right now, but just understand this. If you're doing abdominal exercises, I'm not talking about sit-ups. I'm not talking about ridiculous movements like leg lifts and sit-ups and all sorts of stuff that's going to contort your back and put your lower back at increased risk of a herniation. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing properly designed abdominal and core workouts that are going to integrate not just your 6-pack, your 8-pack muscles, but all of the muscles in your core, because your core is made up of a lot of different musculature, okay? So you need to be able to hit the front, the sides, the back, the deep, okay? All those muscles are really, really important, and I'll talk about those in a different video. But essentially, abdominal training has its importance in the sense that the more you can develop your deep core muscles and the outer core muscles and all those muscles we've just been talking about, the better your posture is going to be, okay? So just from a posture perspective, that's really important. From a low back and back health perspective, doing proper core exercises is going to help big time. The third thing is that from a performance standpoint, energy transfer, if you're an athlete, if you exercise, if you play sports, the energy transfer from your upper to lower body or lower to upper body is greatly enhanced through a strong core. For instance, I love tennis, so if I'm serving in tennis, what do you think is one of the most important movements or muscle groups for me to strengthen? On a serve, specifically on a serve. Well, if you said my arm, you'd probably be incorrect. I mean, you might be correct to some degree, but the most important movement or muscle group that I can strengthen for a better serve are my legs, okay? Because as I go into my serve, as I push down into the floor, that same force will push back through my body and end up in the service motion. The stronger my legs are, the more power I can generate in my serve, and that's all transferred through my core. Now, I know this is kind of going a little bit more beyond the kind of the belly fat and the abdominal kind of protocol that we're talking about, but the notion is that you need a healthy combination of cardio, the right type of strength training, and the specifically designed core and abdominal workouts that will strengthen your core without compromising your lower back, okay? So, we'll keep it at that. I know this has been a longer video. Thank you for your patience. Hope you've learned a lot. And yeah, in another video, we'll be talking about specific abdominal exercises, the different types. I'm also going to be sharing my top 10 core exercises with you and a lot more. So stay tuned to the videos. Do not miss a single one. If you've been enjoying this stuff, let me know below. And I'm going to keep cranking this out because it's the April of abs.